20 minutes? Oh, wow.
20. Oh.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the 29th Annual Sedona International Film Festival. I'm your host, Carol Kahn. We're coming to you live from Yavapai College, and Yavapai College we'd like to thank as one of our sponsors, along with Northern Arizona Healthcare. And this is an exciting moment in the media room because I have the distinct pleasure of introducing you to Russell, Jacqueline, and Christopher, and from the movie Lauren Rose. And thank you so much for being with us today, and thank you for coming to Sedona.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here, and thrilled to be with my two friends and directors from the two movies that are playing here.
I know, just before we started, we had to fan you a little bit. You're sitting between two very handsome men.
Yes.
I'm a little bit jealous because I have to sit over here by myself. That's not fair. But welcome, and the beautiful thing is that we are celebrating two films, and Sleepy Time Gal, and the two of you are directors from each of the films, Russell from Lauren and Rose, and Christopher from Sleepy Time Gal, and you have a beautiful actress that was in both.
Yes. A
So-
beautiful and great actress.
Yes.
Incredible
Thank you.
actress.
It's extraordinary for me to be here with these two particular chaps. It's been a tremendous growth period, dating back to the Sleepy Time Gal, which we did in 2000.
It came out in 2001,
It
but
came
we
out-
started filming it in 1997. So it was a long-term
It
project.
was over 3 years. We did it over 3 years, I believe for economic reasons mainly, right? And yes,
Way it
and
worked out.
and then of course this we did.
It's the opposite sort of production schedule is in 13 days. So it's, from one was an extremely expanded production to one that was really compressed.
Yeah, so the beautiful thing too, I know like we've chatted before, but and you've mentioned that both of these, as far as the role that you had in both, was a dream come true for you.
It's just it's just on a different level, And I became an actress wanting a certain kind of career. I didn't necessarily get the kind of career I wanted, but I did some good stuff. I did some commercial stuff and some other stuff. But really, in my deep heart, I wanted to work in these kind of really intense, complicated, deep roles where I could do my stuff and be seen by the director, taken seriously, not even seriously, just closeness, intimacy. And I feel that probably these two men probably know me much better than most people do, because they've cajoled me, teased me, been sweet to me, and admired me, and all the different things that a woman needs to flower and give willingly, without making me scared.
Yeah, so the relationship, the two of you, because Russell, didn't you were friends with Christopher at some particular point. Is that how you met Jacqueline?
Yeah, so I mean, Chris and I have been friends for 20 years, and I had one of my first on-set jobs working for Chris on a film that he was making, and I was his script supervisor. And and Chris has just been a real support to me for my whole career, and as I was making other films, and was one of the editors of Lauren and Rose, and we're just really close friends.
Yeah, and I feel very highly about Russell's work as well, and have sought to encourage it in whatever way possible, and have worked for him on a couple of occasions as an editor. So we've both worked in each other's films to a degree, and very valuable, great friendship.
I love that. Basically, the film itself, Lauren and Rose, I think when you wrote it, you said you didn't really have an actress in mind at the time.
Yeah.
So how did the role for Jacqueline come into play?
Well, I mean, Jacqueline and I were friends, and we knew each other, and I was sort of having dinner with her one night, and it sort of put the thought in my mind that maybe she'd be great for this part, and then I said it to her a couple weeks later, and she responded to it, and then we really just started working on it together, and kind of developing the character, and she would ask me lots of questions, and we got to know each other better, and it was just a process of evolution of.
Yeah, but these were wow moments. They weren't just, oh, so let's have a look. It was as was the Sleepy Time Gal, and this one, I was like, wow, this is so difficult to do and so interesting, and my God, could I ever manage to do it? And when will they be patient with me so I can dig? But really extraordinary. They were just so unusual moments.
Yeah, and we do have a clip, but I want to ask you a question before we even get in there. So Lauren and Rose was a conversation between a young filmmaker, and an actress.
Yeah.
So with Jacqueline and Kelly, who's not here. Sorry, Kelly, you're missing out.
Kelly is the young man who plays Lauren. Sometimes it's confusing because Kelly, it's not sure, but yeah.
Yeah. So, was it a risk for you to do a film like this in one setting, with a conversation going on between the whole entire film?
Oh, for sure. I mean, my hesitation of making this movie from the second was that it's going to be just a completely dead, dry, boring exercise that no one's going to want to watch. And I think the process of writing the script was constantly dealing with that fear and trying to figure out how do you do this type of movie and not make it just a really dry exercise of two people agreeing with each other for an hour and a half. I mean, so.
But they don't.
They don't, and that was part of it, and it was really just refining the script to its really, to its most essential stuff. And one of the things that I like when people say about the movie is that sometimes audience members say, it never felt like I was in the same space for an hour and a half. It felt so dynamic, and I always think I set out what I accomplished to do in terms of the writing when they say that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I felt like I was a voyeur. I said I was a voyeur at a conversation.
Yeah, and it says a lot about the performances of those two actors, about how incredibly well they inhabited those roles, because it really feels so real.
Yes, it does. Well, we do have a clip, so let's take a look at that, and then we'll talk more.
Through it all, I saw a spectre emerge. It was death. I heard it roar. And then I felt a gentle, healing spirit breathing life back into me. And a woman's deep voice whispered, "You have power. Never give it away."
She was due her comeback, a great talent waiting to be unleashed again.
This place is an institution.
How long have you been coming here?
About 15 years.
It's your own Rick's Cafe?
And I'll get down to brass tacks. The actress Jean Moreau said, for some people, cinema means something superficial and glamorous. But I think it is the mirror of the world. Never tell anyone. Never look for me.
I think you should look for another actress.
Did you tell him?
I somehow can't do it.
My beautiful Rose.
Stand tall, Lauren. Be an artist. I've always let so much come in the way, but you don't have to. Visi d'arte, visi d'amore. Live for art, live for love.
Funny when you see clips, it's like, why did they take that bit? Anyway.
You're actually like reliving this every time that you watch this again.
Well,
I think it was beautifully done. And I want to ask you too, because you used the word mirror in here, and there are mirrors in the background when you were filming. And I asked Jacqueline this when we spoke before, but did the mirrors have any part of the film, or was it just happened to be there?
No, the mirrors were super intentional. I mean, the whole idea of using mirrors was, again, back to the how do you make this not just a movie of two people sitting and talking to each other. When you have the actors with these mirrors behind them, it creates a real sort of dynamism in terms of you can see what's going on in the restaurant. you can get different types of angles on their faces. You know, you can shift the positions of the mirrors to create new types of, you know, aesthetics and new types of shots. And so there was a constant mirror play going on when we were shooting the movie.
Yeah, and then I saw people move around in the characters, and
Yeah.
so it was very symbolic with who was sitting where when, and so that's what I picked up from watching it.
Yeah, when you're making this movie, you have to sort of be incredibly intentional because you only have so many tools at your disposal because it's really just this one location.
Right.
It didn't feel like that from the inside, acting it. It felt fully rich and constantly enriching itself. So I didn't worry about, I mean, when I saw all those mirrors, I thought, God, there's mirrors everywhere. And is that going to make things complicated? But it didn't bother us, didn't bother me, I don't know. And he would talk about mirrors a lot and what it's giving, and I couldn't sense that. I must say I'd never understood. But you managed to do something subtle without this Olga thing, worrying about reflections and stuff.
Yes, and the film itself is talking about, it's an actress who wants to make a comeback again in her life. And in Hollywood, like, you know, we're dealing with like women aging, and do you feel that roles are less and less as you aged, or in something like this, it was perfect for you?
And I really don't. I think you have to be flexible. You have to realize what the industry is like. It tends to be cinema tends to be leaning towards the young, and the commercial cinema tends to young sexuality. And I mean, you know, there's a lot of that which pushes the industry, sexy people, attractive people, all that stuff, action, But that's a part of it. I think I read a lot of things, and I have a quick sense of whether there's anything more that I haven't done. So I'm looking for things I haven't done and feelings, and I want to grow as a human. Primarily, I want to grow so that I've got more tools in my library. I think there's lots of stuff that could be done more. I think women are very interesting as they grow older, because God knows, with most of us have gone through quite a lot. And I mean, young people seem to be fascinated when they get a chance to see it. The question is finding a place to see it. And I remember my obsession with Jeanne Moreau was, as a young woman, was how worldly she was and sophisticated, and I didn't know anything about it, and I just wanted to get even a teeny little bit of that sophistication in my life. And her sensuality was interesting. It wasn't showing off all the time. On the contrary, it was very discreet and like a gift. She would smile occasionally, and the sort of screen would just, it would be a gift. And there wasn't an extra, it wasn't too much of anything, and she wasn't vulgar, and she didn't have to do, you know, she didn't have to overdo it. It was coming from the inside, and I love that. And most women have a great deal to give in the inside, which they love to give to somebody. I mean, in a love relationship, often not fully developed. And there's just so much that we female women, obviously women, have to give. And I just think it could be just great. If you've got writers like these two chaps, I think, you know, there's just so much could be done.
I love the three of you. Do you want to trade places so I can just sit there in the middle?
You can sit here.
I'll just move over. One of the other fascinating things is the script itself. So the script, because you did not ad-lib at all, and you pretty much followed the script.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
That was amazing. I thought for sure you ad-libbed at some part.
No. The script was a bit longer when we started, and he cut down some stuff.
Yeah.
When
I
I
mean,
did,
oh, sorry.
go ahead. No.
And I was just going to say, with the you know, because these are essentially 3 long scenes, you know, it's very hard to sort of ad-lib in that structure, because you're trying to get from idea to topic, and it doesn't really leave for a lot of room for ad-lib.
Yeah. No, it was very well done.
When I did the Sleepy Time Gal, I was really worried about the amount of words I had to say, because when I first read his script, it was extremely literate, and I said, I'm not sure that I'm going to know how to. I'm not sure I have really, you know. It was complex and about some things I didn't know about, and and Chris was just so gentle with me. But he said, I do want you to be an American. And it took me a year to get in that direction. It took a year of, and when I got the accent right, at one point I kind of got it, and then I found that I'd lost all my femininity. I really felt it was just gone. It was like I was concentrating on the accent. And then when I got on the set, Chris said, less. I thought, oh my God, it's so hard to do an accent and then do less, rather than an overt accent, which was, once you've done your study of stuff, it's relatively easy to get the basics, but these were big lessons, enormous lessons for me.
And Chris, as far as Sleepy Time Gal, this is celebrating the 20th anniversary coming up?
Roughly. It premiered at Sundance in 2001, but it didn't come out until 2002 to 2003. So roughly 20 years since it was completed. And, I tend not to look back on my own work that much. I haven't made that many features. I've made 6 features in the last 30 years. And going back and revisiting this movie was a really wonderful experience, because it has gained a new perspective. I've gained a new perspective on it from this point, just realizing the way that it sort of fits into the mosaic of my other work and in my personal life, and just in terms of my growth as a director. Jacqueline was a wonderful teacher in that sense, a wonderful actress to work with, as was Martha Plimpton and
Yes.
our other stars, Nick Stahl
yeah.
and Amy Madigan, Seymour Cassell. It was a really wonderful cast to work with, and I'm forever grateful to them for sticking with it, especially to Jacqueline, because she was in the most scenes, and it was logistically the most complicated for her to sort of have continuity between these different units that we shot in over the course of 2.5 years.
But it worked for the film for me, because then I had time to be, because in the film I'm both sick and healthy in different places, a story, and I was able to be healthy and get my looks up again, and then also to totally destroy myself before the time got when I was supposed to be very sick, and get really puffy and unhealthy looking, and I thought, God, that's what happens when you eat normal food. That's why people, I used to be able to lose 5 years if I ate right. I think that has changed now. I'm not sure I can do it any longer, but if I stayed away from salt completely, and I could take my character into different spots. I said to Russell that I would try to do that for today, but it didn't work. Mucho salt.
Yeah.
I think you look beautiful, and you are flanked by 2 handsome men, so there you go.
Yeah.
Who haven't slept necessarily.
One question I want to ask you, because you mentioned something, Chris, about not looking back at your films, which I think is really interesting, because a lot of actors and actresses, same kind of thing, they won't watch themselves on film to watch it again. And I find that interesting, because typically sometimes with the film is that you learn something new every time about your life, and it takes you to a new direction. So talk to me about that process.
Yes, well, the career that I've had has been kind of at the margins of commercial art house cinema, which is sort of oxymoronic, I suppose. But, always the choice of subject that I've wanted to pursue in a film has crept up on me in some inexplicable way. It hasn't been by design, by seeking out a particular topic that I wanted to cover. And that's been very rewarding, because it entails, a great process of discovery. In the case of the Sleepy Time Gal, it dealt with an aspect of my own mother's life that I knew nothing about while she was alive, and that was something that was sort of the central trauma to her life, giving up a daughter for adoption at birth in the 1950s in Florida. And other films have, dealt with different, very divergent subjects. That my last picture was called The 11th Green, which came out in 2020. And it used the folklore of President Eisenhower's long alleged involvement in UFO events as a kind of entry point into a larger discussion of how UFO events have intersected or not with the national security state and the history of post-war America. And interestingly, it has become more timely in the years since it was written and released, with all of the hullabaloo in the press about unidentified objects, which have become somewhat more acceptable to talk about. So in a sense, I think the role of an artist or filmmaker is to anticipate perhaps those changes and those trends, and somehow to explore them by way of your own sensibilities and your own preoccupations, and come up with something to say that's worth saying about them, hopefully. The Sleepy Time Gal, was not something that you could hit on the head, and it went through a lot of crafting in the editing process in the hands of Dodie Dorn, a really great editor who was a mentor of mine. And also I learned a great deal from my producer, Ruth Charney, who was extremely devoted to making this picture, despite the fact that nobody wanted to finance it. Its original title was Backward Looks, Far Corners, so it dealt with how one reflects back on the most moving events of one's life.
And Russell, for you, what's like your takeaway, especially in doing a film like this, and what was your learning curve? What did you learn about?
I don't know. It's hard to sum up. I mean, there's so many different kind of lessons that you take along the way from making a movie and working. You're always working with people and learning things from them. And I don't know. I guess I'd have to think about it some more. I'm not sure one thing necessarily jumps out.
And in working with Jacqueline, what was your biggest learning?
My biggest learning with working with Jacqueline? No, I mean, I think, I don't know. I have to sort of think about it.
Come on, give us something. Come on.
Give me something.
I mean, honestly, there's sort of a lot of the real sort of small details of a character that Jacqueline really sort of hammered in on, that have to do with like hair, costume, wardrobe, makeup, all of these kind of details that I've never really worked with an actor who was that precise and committed to those details. So I think it's just now made me naturally more kind of observant and a little bit obsessed with those things too.
Mm-hmm. And how did you choose Kelly for the part?
Kelly, I didn't really choose Kelly. I mean, Kelly walked in and gave the most incredible audition. I mean, we'd auditioned so many people, and I actually was gonna give up the idea of making the movie because we couldn't find a Lauren, and I just thought, I don't know what's wrong, but I can't find this actor. I'm not sure what the problem is, but he came in, and it was like a eureka moment for me because he just totally understood it. So in a way, it wasn't even choosing him. It was just he walked in and it was him.
He was the role.
He was the role.
Yes.
And not only was he the role, but I think I can speak for Jacqueline too. We both just adore Kelly as a person.
Yes. Yeah.
So it was very easy to slide him into our movie because he was so lovely.
But one doesn't know where it's going to go. You don't know. Obviously, you have to have that empathy. I tell this story of a meeting when I first met Kelly socially at his house, at Russell's house. There were two cats that wandering around, and I watched him with these cats, and I just felt this guy has really got a tender heart and a feeling person. I could just feel that he was just full of yearning for life, and I don't know on every level. I don't know what level because I didn't know him, but I entered his space in a very empathetic way, and that continued.
And Jacqueline, when do you know that a role is right for you?
Well, when you read it, you kind of know that you say, I just get, it's like you see a painting that you think, I've got to have that painting. I just feel connected to it. I want to own it. I want to be with that painting, or read a script. I want to play those words. I often will be attracted by maybe 2 sentences in a script that feel that essential. They feel that they get down to the bone of what I think is important in life and what sums up a character sometimes. In Sleepy Time Gal, he almost cut the line that I felt produced my character's back life, which was, speaking of her husband who is no longer alive, what is it he says to me? What does Nick Stahl say to me?
Well, he just asks very legitimately, why did you marry him?
Right.
After they had been divorced when he was very young. So.
And my response to it was, because I loved him. He was a great kisser and a great scientist. And it was a moment that I just relish at the time in the movie when I say this line, her life has gone down. And if he'd cut it, I would have been so upset. It was just because there's very little of showing her back life. Even though the film is a lot about the different things she did in her life. It's a very complex character, but those 3 words, I just thought it was just such a gift to me. And I just think he was a great kisser. I just thought it's a great line. Isn't that a great line?
It is a great line.
It's a great line. You say this woman enjoyed her life. She didn't, And in your film, let me think, what's the line? In your film, what's the line? Oh my God.
Which part?
I don't know. I have to just come. Yeah.
There's so many lines.
There's so many wonderful lines. So many, but they're like honestly, they're like presents. They're like things that open you emotionally. Just ping. You go ping.
Oh, you really like be an artist, take control of your...
Yes,
Yeah.
be an artist. Stand up and be...
Own your
Own your
existence.
existence. I mean, this is... For all the people who are trying to be artists in life and already... and hiding and fearful, and she brings Kelly's character out of a kind of slump in a way he's going through. Giving confidence, that mentoring thing is just so vital. I'm talking too much.
No, keep talking.
No,
Like
it's
your accent.
very, very wonderful.
But you use the inoperable word mentoring. So as far as like mentoring, did each of you have your own mentor in films, in filmmaking?
Me.
Yeah, you can start.
I've had many mentors. I mean, Chris has been an incredible mentor. Jacqueline's been a mentor. It's funny. The last festival we were at, somebody came up to me at the end and said, you talk a lot about mentorship, but what this movie really is about for me was unconditional love. And I just thought, that's so sweet. I'd never thought of it that way. And maybe that's part of what mentorship is also, is somebody who accepts you for your mistakes and helps you, get better. Mm-hmm. And it's that kind of unconditional love.
Yeah, I mean, that's very well put. And I think also somebody, and I've been fortunate to have a number of mentors and collaborators in my life, they are able to visualize where you're going, even if you can't necessarily know what that is yourself at that point. They know your greatest potential. They perhaps know how to ease you there, even while realizing that the journey is your own and the mistakes are your own that you have to make along the way, which is unfortunate, in the filmmaking world, because the economics are so extreme. The ability to fail is not something you really have, particularly if you're starting out in making a first feature. There's a great deal of expectation surrounding that, and unfortunately that expectation, I think, can really do a number on you as a young filmmaker particularly. So a mentor or somebody who's a confidant or a collaborator who can really visualize your potential and in subtle or not so subtle ways push you in that direction is priceless, absolutely.
And Jacqueline?
I don't really feel I had a mentor. I had a boyfriend when I was at school. My last years was for school, Frenchman, and he loved films, and we used to get out. We used to skedaddle from school on Tuesdays and at other times and go and see French films. And then we would go and see Ingmar Bergman films, and we would see all those incredible movies of the early 60s and end of the 50s. And I think he mentored me just by taking me to see those films. And I wouldn't have known about them, and I wouldn't have had the eye that I developed. And then Pasolini and a lot, and the Swedish directors and all that stuff. And it gave me such an incredible sense of what is all this stuff? What is film? I didn't go to the cinema as a child, and what is this European thing? My mind was just wow, really wow. But that led me to start investigating whether even the idea of being an actress, I didn't even dream that I could even attempt it. I was embarrassed as hell to even want to. I thought, God, I'm being so vain. What makes me think I can be an actor? And so on. And so those things are there. I'm sure most of the public probably had moments when they think, I have something inside I want to try, and you just got to go for it.
At what point do you feel like whatever project that you're working on is good enough?
I mean,
Incredible question.
Yeah, I mean, there's an element of it that you honestly just can't stand it anymore. Like, sometimes people, filmmaking is kind of an incredible craft because you're dealing with 1/24th of a second when you're making, 400 cuts over the point of a movie. And then you're dealing with the sound, which is another layer of 24ths of a second. So you're dealing with an incredibly sort of precise art, and you kind of feel like, and you can never get it right in a way, but there's an old sort of hackneyed quote that good films are never completed, they're abandoned. I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Really? That's interesting.
I've heard that before.
Yeah, it's definitely true. And it's important. I think sometimes we lose sight of the fact that filmmaking is a continuum from writing through shooting into editing. They're not discrete, really, even though they are chronologically discrete usually. They're not discrete phases. And I think for a writer-director or a writer-director-editor, you sense that most acutely, and running up against an obstacle in pre-production where you have a producer or a production manager very legitimately needing a script that's kind of in its final shape can be very difficult. Or if you're a filmmaker who falls into the so-called execution-dependent category, as apparently I do, and as a parent, which makes it very hard to finance a movie ahead of time because the finished product doesn't necessarily reflect this kind of interim blueprint that your screenplay is. But a film really comes alive in the hands of gifted actors. And in the case of The Sleepy Time Gal, the character that had originated in somebody I actually knew underwent this remarkable, wonderful transformation in Jacqueline's hands into her own character and into a character that you could watch in a work of fiction and be moved by through her craft and through her own intuitive process.
Your words, and primarily your words that give you the possibility.
Well, it's an interaction that occurs all throughout, and that interaction continues into the editing process. As Russ was saying, being rigorous changes shape. I mean, what it means to be rigorous in cutting a movie changes as you undergo it, but what is clear is that it is a process always, and the process doesn't really lend itself to be hit over the head with bludgeoning something into shape. You really need the time to allow the truest voice of the material to emerge through the process of getting to know the material and in the process of finally realizing what it needs in order to be the strongest version of itself. And it is very true that you do give up on it at a certain point simply because you feel that it has reached that point. And David Lean, I think, popularized another aphorism that there comes a point of inevitable compromise. So there's truth to that as well. And some people are more persistent as far as seeking an elusive goal, and your ability to do that is usually directly proportionate to the time and money that you have available. So oftentimes the limitations of time and money can very much work in your favor in terms of focusing your intention and allowing synchronicity and unspoken qualities of sympathy and intuition to take hold.
I will say, this is my 5th feature, and I kind of wanted to add on to sort of what Chris said is, Chris was one of the editors of Lauren and Rose, and I will say this one was really hard to let go. Like, I really went down the rabbit hole trying to get it right, and I think I drove all my collaborators a little insane because I wanted to make it perfect.
I think that's a really tough thing, being writer's director as an actress. I mean, not only do you have your own work, right, that you want to be perfect and you spend a lot of time and you're completely passionate about your projects that you're working on, but then you have to deal with the outside of what Hollywood or critics or whatever it is have to say about the film. And so it's really hard because while you may love the film and worked really hard on it, and someone else pans it, or someone else says, oh, this is great, and you could have thought, well, I bombed here, but other people are saying it's great, maybe it's great. So you have this like weird like dichotomy of like, how do you feel what's true, the true sense of having your project and your passion project something that you feel like you've done a great job with. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
How do you overcome that, I guess, is what I'm trying to ask. Like, because you're so passionate about your project and you've worked so hard on it, but then you have other people and critics may say, oh, that was not a good performance, or that was not a good film, or whatever it is that they say about it. How do you deal with the negativity of something like that? Or do you deal with it, or just ignore it?
I think you know when you're good. I think you know.
Yeah, that's the thing. Your yardstick has to be an internal one, because if you're going to judge your own work by the reception that it has, you're lost. Really, you really have to have your own conditions of satisfaction, and you have to know what those are, and always look to those for whatever reinforcement that you may need in going forward. And I always say that the vast majority of motion pictures, of feature films, are never going to be commercially successful. So the things that do make them commercially successful, I think, are often not the formulaic aspects that you often hear are the reasons, but rather some other indefinable synchronicity with the audience. And for me, having the passion to make a film and to devote years to it is always an indication that some audience exists for it, even if it's a small audience. And that, for me, is a really important guidepost in the making of a film. Of course, everybody likes a film to be well reviewed, but we all know that many very fine films are not well reviewed and don't even see the light of day, even by major filmmakers. So really, it's important to develop your own sense of value in your work, and enjoy the process, and not be so focused on any expectation of a particular outcome.
That's easy to say, but you can't help but want it to do well.
Sure.
You want it to
Sure.
do.
And you want to support it in whatever way you can,
Yes.
but it is what it is an interaction with the rest of the world.
I think sometimes, reviews are interesting, because sometimes you may get sort of a mixed review or a bad review, and you really feel like, wow, the person thought about it and considered it, and actually I'm grateful to those people. And the same thing when somebody writes well about a movie, and they write well about it in a way that shows that they really took the time to kind of think about it. And then there's sort of the current, blogosphere attitude sometimes, where people are just, there's some sort of blood sport in being kind of vicious, and then you just think like, well, I'm glad I'm not that human. I don't want to live in that mind.
Yeah. Well, we do have some media here. I don't know if anybody has any questions for everybody.
Hi, I'll jump in. Hello, I'm Bonnie, and I wanted to ask you, Jacqueline, about your career. Now, looking back at your younger self, what advice would you give yourself then, and what kind of advice would that be the same kind of advice you'd give to other young women entering highly competitive fields?
I don't know. Advice is something I don't know about. I used to think, something I would have changed. I would have done more exercise. No, I had a lot of exercise, mental exercise, and I would have made myself physically stronger. I think it would have been good to be physically stronger, because I would have had, once again, more energy, and I had a great energy until to a certain point in my life when I did a movie that was so stressful that I lost a lot of energy, and I lost a lot of that bounce back kind of. I used to be kind of like a ball. You could bounce up and I'd come back up again. I was extremely positive and energized, I think. And then when I later on found that was lacking in my life, I went back and started to exercise. Brought me a lot of vitality, and you need this extra gear when you're working. I think of that actress who died. What was her name? Who was like absolute spitfire. I always say she had an extra gear. Clotilde Leachman, Cloris Leachman.
Cloris.
I don't know if she exercised, but she had absolutely another, more than most. She had that vitality when she got older, and vitality is it's good for every aspect of your life. I've forgotten the question.
Oh, just advice you give to other.
Well, no, but a lot of people do that now, but not just for the reasons you do it. It's not only about how you look. No, it's about what you discover as you feel that little bit of optimism which comes with health. And dance more, I would say. Dance more, play that music, whatever, just enjoy your body if you can. I mean, I was so complex. I mean, nobody believes me, but I know I was, and I'm still complex. So many things that I was hiding from. I was mortified by not being. I remember living at the beach in California when I first went there, and I would see these creatures running down the beach with hair flying and dogs racing after them, and I said, I will never be that person. I will never be able to do that in an unself-conscious way. I'll always be behind the window going, oh my God, I can't do that. And I never got to do it. But, I mean, it's a silly thing, but it's a kind of inhibition. So you gradually, but you've got to meet people, hang with people who have quality and who see you and read and explore museums and art and photography and learn a language and do the things that keep you vital. I'm telling people all the time, learn a language. It changed my life to speak French. At a time when I wasn't doing so much, I got to do a film with François Truffaut. I mean, what's better than that? And then I did a movie with Belmondo and so on and so on. And all these things just make you less scared. And then when I did The Deep, I had to learn not to be frightened. I was deeply frightened going underwater, and I haven't been underwater since. I have not put my head underwater since 1977. I was so terrified, but I got there. I managed to do it. And I don't know. It's just keep trying. But don't be puffed up. You've got to be very real, be very honest, polite, clean. Just people want people around them who they're pleasant to work with. People don't want to work with people who are a nightmare. And understand that when they give you a chair on the set, it's not about you. It's about keeping your costume clean, keeping you fresh, getting you tired as you sit on the floor or something. All those, when they give you a car to take you to your home, it's about keeping you safe. It's about insurance. It's not about you being a big puffed up star. None of that is irrelevant. So you've got to just be a little bit humble.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great advice.
Does anybody else have any questions? Okay. Well, I want to thank all of you for being here. Russell, Jacqueline, Chris, thank you so much for coming here to the Sedona International Film Festival. It's such a pleasure
Thank you.
talking
Thank
with
you.
Thank you.
you all.
Thanks
Such
so
an
much.
honor
Do you
want to sit
have
here
you.
now?
Can I? She's going to take over. Okay, everybody. You have to close out now. And we'll be back with more from the Sedona International Film Festival after this. And I get to sit here. I love this moment.